Welcome to This Week in Christian History, a podcast from the Center for Christian History at Mississippi Christian University. The Center for Christian History is dedicated to expanding knowledge and understanding of Christian history. Our mission is to provide a scholarly, unbiased look at the events, figures, and movements that have shaped Christianity over the centuries. You can visit centerforchristianhistory.com for daily historical highlights, and each week on this podcast, we'll do a deep dive into key moments with Christian history's leading authorities. Our first historical highlight for the week is the beginning of the Scudder family's journey to India. Dr. John Scudder, his wife Harriet, and several other missionary couples set sail on June 8, 1819. Scudder was among the first American medical missionaries. He believed that caring for the body and sharing the gospel could go hand in hand. Scudder's granddaughter, Ida Sophia Scudder, would later found the Christian Medical College and Hospital in India, which continues to train healthcare professionals and provide treatment to patients to this day. Our next historical highlight is Father Mitrofan and the Boxer Rebellion, a violent uprising that emerged from a mixture of political frustration, economic hardship, and resentment toward foreign influence in China. Christianity was often associated with Western missionaries and foreign powers. Thus, Chinese Christians became particular targets of Boxer violence. Thousands of believers from various Chinese traditions would be killed during the uprising. Father Mitrofan was a native Chinese priest who devoted his life to serving the growing Orthodox community in Beijing. On June 10, 1900, a small group of Chinese Christians gathered in Father Mitrofan's home. Just over a week earlier, their church had been burned by members of the Boxer movement. Late that night on June 10th, Boxer fighters surrounded the home and tortured and abused the Christians. Despite the terror they faced, many of them refused to renounce Christ. The attackers inflicted severe wounds upon Father Mitrofan and pierced his chest, and he died beneath a date tree near his home. The Orthodox Church later recognized Father Mitrofan and his fellow believers among the martyrs of China. Our final historical highlight for the week and the subject of our deep dive is G.K. Chesterton. One of the most prolific Christian writers of the 1900s, Chesterton penned over 4,000 essays. He also authored 200 short stories and 100 books, including the Father Brown Mystery Series. One of his famous quotes is, quote, "Impartiality is a pompous name for indifference, which is an elegant name for ignorance," end quote. He died in London on June 14th, 1936. Today in our deep dive, Nick Walters, founder and director of the Center for Christian History, talks with Dale Ahlquist of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton about G.K. Chesterton.
Hello and welcome again to yet another episode of This Week in Christian History. And we are focusing on this week of June the 8th on a death date of one of the most prolific humans to ever sit down and put a pen in their hand, I think, who is commonly known as G.K. Chesterton. And we are visiting with the president of the Gilbert Keith Chesterton Society, the Society of, I should say, the Gilbert Keith Chesterton and Dale Ahlquist, who is the president there. Dale, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
I'm happy to be with you, Nick.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, prolific is probably just not even a close enough word, is it? For and the breadth and the depth of somebody who wrote as much as Chesterton, everything from fiction to poetry to theology, apologetics. I mean, he's all over the map, right? But he's not like he's all over the map because he can't be focused. He's just, it seems to me, he's just got that much in between his ears, right? He's just got that much that he's thinking about that we fortunately get to read about. Is that a fair assessment, or is that probably not even close?
That's very fair, but even that doesn't, of course, even approach summarizing it, because it is mind-boggling how much Chesterton wrote, and his writing career basically spanned the first third of the 20th century. We're celebrating the 90th anniversary of his death, June 14th, 1936. And from basically 1900 to 1936, he wrote more than just about anybody's ever written. And and you've hit the things. Writes all different subjects. If it's theology, philosophy, politics, economics, art, literature, magic, you know,
Oh, really? I
yeah,
didn't know magic.
everything. He just whatever the subject is, he has something to say about it. And but then he wrote plays, he wrote poetry, he wrote detective fiction. He actually wrote some really pivotal detective fiction in the early 20th century. The first antidotes to Father Brown, I mean Father Brown was the first contrasting detective to Sherlock Holmes because Sherlock Holmes was the super sleuth and Father Brown, the little priest, the little humble priest who doesn't look like a superstar at all, seems to be able to solve the problem that nobody else can solve. And so he,
Right, right. Well, how fantastic, dude. So how do you give us some overview, just maybe a background, of his life and did he finish university? I mean, did he?
no, no. In fact, he
Yeah.
did. He went to a really quite reputable preparatory school called St. Paul's School in London. People like John Milton went there, and Field Marshal Montgomery went there. But
Okay.
Chesterton would have been considered, in hindsight, one of their most illustrious students. Except he was such a bad student.
Oh,
He was mostly a daydreamer. He won a poetry prize while I was there, which is the only way he advanced from one grade or one level to the next. But his parents were told by the headmaster, don't even bother sending him to the university. It's impossible to teach him anything.
wow.
And so he went to an art school. All of his good friends went off to Oxford and Cambridge, but he went to an art school and dropped out of art school too because it didn't hold his attention. This was in the 1890s. Impressionism was on the rise. He had no
Mm.
interest or love in Impressionism. He said that was going to be the downfall of art. He predicted that it would be. And of course the Impressionists looked good compared to what happened after them. But
Right.
but at the time he said, when the lines start blurring, that's he says art like morality consists of drawing the line someplace. And so
That's good.
he dropped out of art school and started working for a publisher as just reading books, being the filter whether they should get published or not, and then started as a journalist in the right at the beginning of the 20th century, and as a journalist wrote over 6,000 essays. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. I mean, do you think, modern day, coming through an education program, they'd have probably tried to put him on ADD medicine, right? I mean, just to make him focus in or make him think that's what he needed to do instead of kind of letting him be the delta of the flood that he was, right? And let it just
Yeah.
go wherever it went, right?
That's a really good point, Nick, because he was such a horrible student, and they might have tried to drug him into compliance, which would have made him, would have destroyed him. And of
Yeah.
course, going to university might have messed him up too. So God protected him from a lot of things by that unique mind that he gave him, and he just had a way of seeing things that seemed to be there, quite complete from the beginning. But he was not raised as a creedal Christian as such. He really had to discover Christianity, and that story is told in his book Orthodoxy, which is it's just a great Christian classic. It's probably unlike any book of Christian apologetics that anyone would ever read,
Mm.
because he doesn't take the normal approach, which is we're sinners, right? And original sin's the only doctrine we can prove, right? Instead he says people don't even acknowledge sin anymore. They don't even believe in the reality of sin. So let's argue what's the most sane philosophy? What is the most sane philosophy? Chesterton says, you're not convinced the philosophy is true because it uh, because something proves it. You're convinced it's true when everything proves it.
Mm.
And he takes the approach that Christianity is always proved to be right, no matter how it is attacked and from what side or on what grounds it is attacked. It always turns out to be right, and it's a wonderfully original approach to defending the faith.
No doubt about that. But now he started out in the Anglican faith, right? And
No,
then
no, he started out
converted
as what
or
we'd call
oh,
really a Unitarian.
okay.
And so his conversion to Christianity would have entered the Anglican Church at that
I
point.
got you. And then from there, then he had a conversion experience into Catholicism,
Right,
right?
in
So he was
1922 he became a Catholic, and he really said it was one steady progress. You know, he's just a great. He was embracing, historical Christianity, and so he had a great a great sense for the fact that the truth goes from one generation to the next. He says, if philosophy is true on Tuesday, it has to be true on Wednesday as well.
you can't you can't stop it.
Right, right, and
Uh,
so there's no truth that's new. It's always the old truth that's still true.
well, what was it about that do you think across doctrinal and theological spectrums, right? I mean, whether somebody is, you know, hardcore Catholic or slipping in and out Protestant, whatever it is that they might be, regardless of which way that they might personally think otherwise, it just seems like he's got an appeal to all of them at some point. They might have, right? I mean, there could be Protestant Catholic conversations and dialogue and, theological tit for tat and back and forth and having but at the end of the day, it seems like anybody who is trying to learn can find something in the world of the things that Chesterton spoke about that says, I'm not with him on those three things, but these 14 things over here, I'm with him on that. And I love to be able to hear
Yeah.
from him. I
No,
mean,
that's a
so
good point too, because I've dubbed him the apostle of common sense, and I think that's part of his great appeal is that he utters universal truths that we all know to be true, but we didn't even think about it until he said so, right? We just go, "Oh yeah. Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but of course that's right." And Chesterton with all his great quotations, his great witticisms, it's just one little pearl of truth after the other that most everyone can agree with. And that's why he has such a wide appeal, not
mm,
only among Christians and all of the differences, among the Christian denominations, but with non-Christians as well, because Chesterton's truth is truly universal. And when people disagree with him, that's when it gets fun because he loves to argue too. So he'll take you on, but it's such a joyful battle. But he says everything should be a good fight, he says.
well, are there reports of that whenever he did get into those debates and did those things that was he able to bring his wit and his humor and things like that to the table? Because that's always such a powerful weapon, right? If you call it that in an argument or a conversation like that, if he can bring, humor or a good one-liner or something else to the table, that's pretty hard to combat against.
Yeah, he was known as the man with no enemies because even though he had his philosophical opponents who just absolutely disagree with him, whether it was on politics or economics or on faith, they couldn't help but like him because he was so charming and amicable and truly a loving man, and they were drawn to that, and
Mm.
they wanted to be friends with him, and they wanted to have the argument too. They enjoyed the argument, and people would pay to watch him argue with other people.
Oh,
His
really?
debates were staged all across, Europe, and then he made two U.S. appearances as well. He came to the United States twice, and he had a debate with Clarence Darrow that is never talked about. Everybody talks about Clarence Darrow's Scopes trial with William
Sure.
Jennings Bryan, but nobody talks about the time that Darrow debated Chesterton in New York City, and the crowd voted for Chesterton 2-1 that he had beaten Darrow at his own game. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that now. What a fascinating thing to talk about. How did all that get set up? I mean, is it kind of like in a way we would think of people invited him to come and to do these things, or do you have
Yeah,
a
no,
publicist in the way
yeah.
we think of it that would say, "Hey, we need to do a tour," or how did that work at that time period?
No, even back then in the 1920s and 1930s, he had an agent who arranged all the speeches for him throughout the United States, And it was the agent who put together the debate with Clarence Darrow, as well as debates with other different celebrated thinkers and writers, so they could mix it up. But Chesterton, in all cases, arguing, defending traditional truth against modern fads, against the rise of divorce, against feminism. With Darrow, he was arguing about the truth of religion, that people will always return to religion, no matter what new scientific discoveries there are, that the religious truth doesn't change. And there's nothing that science can do to disprove religious truth.
Wow. And so Darrow had already, I mean, the Scopes trial was over by that time, right?
Yeah, Scopes trial was over. And by that time, Clarence Darrow was no longer practicing as an attorney. He was just going around the country making his money off of lecturing. That's what his living was.
How about that?
And people, he was such a great debater. People were worried about Chesterton debating him, but not only did Chesterton hold his own, he beat him. He beat him hands down.
What was the venue? I mean, did they do it at a university, or did they do
No,
it?
it was a Masonic temple down in downtown New York, because it could hold 4,000 people, and that's why they.
How about that? How great! How great! Are there recordings of those? I mean,
there's no recordings, there's no transcript, but there's reports. And so, in one of my books, I've cobbled together the debate as much as I could. It's that book's called the. Let me see. That's the book, Common Sense 101. No, I'm sorry. The Complete Thinker. Sorry, it's my third book, The Complete Thinker, and the appendix there is a recreation of the Chesterton Darrow debate.
You can watch the rest of Nick's interview with Dale Ahlquist by clicking the View Full Interviews button on the podcast page of centerforchristianhistory.com. This Week in Christian History is produced for the Center for Christian History by Blue and Gold Media at Mississippi Christian University in cooperation with the MC Department of Communication. For episode transcripts and more information, visit centerforchristianhistory.com. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and follow the Center for Christian History on Facebook and Instagram. Our next podcast episode is coming next week. Thank you for listening.